Morning, sophomores. Well, I didn't get my last part of Fahrenheit 451 in yesterday. I got sidetracked. My wife got home. She was telling me about her day. I had to help my son with some work. That nearly drove me crazy, and I didn't get it finished. So today I'm coming to you from my little reading corner over here, so the lighting's a little bit better. And I figure finish out this book. Now, there's very little left, all right? So it shouldn't take me much, but there's some important stuff left. So let's close this out. As far as the questions go, whatever's left on your questions, this should cover those parts, all right? Hey, remember, if you're getting these questions and you're struggling with some, please, ask me. I may not give you a direct answer. I'm trying to avoid just telling you the answers, but I'll try to point you in a direction, okay? Don't just struggle with this and throw something down. It's not helpful. The goal here is not to check a box and say I finished the questions, although I wish some of you would finish the questions. But that being said, I really want you to learn something from this. This book is a powerful book, all right? It really is. And the section we're going to read today is a great example of that, all right? So when we left off yesterday, I kind of left you on a cliffhanger. Bombs were dropped on the city that Montag lived in. We never know the name of the city he lived in, okay? We know it's not St. Louis because that's where Faber is heading. So that's the only thing we don't know. You could probably do some figuring and figure out like how long it took him to get to St. Louis and what big cities that distance, but who cares, okay? It's a city. But there's a bomb. There's a huge. Bradbury has some more of his descriptive sections here. There we go. Where he talks about the bomb. Description's not his best quality, okay? But he talks about that, and Montag starts thinking to himself, get out, get out. He's thinking about, talking to Faber and Clarice and Mildred, and of course Clarice is dead. He realizes that, and he realizes, and this is kind of cool. Faber is out. Faber had already left. Faber was going to leave on this early bus. So Faber is leaving one city that's been destroyed, and he's on a bus, excuse me, to get to another city that's just been destroyed. But he is not in the city that's been bombed. So Faber's still alive. And of course, Mildred, though. Mildred is the interesting one. So I want to read this section because this is one area where his description is really good. It's hit or miss with him on these descriptive passages. They're either kind of boring and bland or they are powerful, all right? He says, and Mildred, get out, run. He saw her in her hotel room somewhere now in the half second remaining with the bombs a yard, a foot, an inch from her building. He saw her leaning toward the great shimmering walls of color and motion where the family talked and talked and talked to her, where the family prattled and chatted and said her name and smiled at her and said nothing of the bomb that was an inch, now half an inch, now quarter of an inch from the top of the hotel. Leaning into the wall as if all the hunger of looking would find the secret of her sleepless unease there, Mildred, leaning anxiously, nervously, as if to plunge, drop, fall into the swarming immensity of color, to drown in its bright happiness. The first bomb struck. Mildred, perhaps, who would ever know, perhaps the great broadcasting stations with their beams of color and light and talk and chatter went first into oblivion. Montag, falling flat, going down, saw or felt or imagined he saw or felt the walls go dark in Millie's face. Heard her screaming because in the millionth part of the time left, she saw her own face reflected there in a mirror instead of a crystal ball. And it was such a wild, empty face all by itself in the room, touching nothing, starved and eating of itself, that at last she recognized it as her own and looked quickly up at the ceiling and at the entire structure of the hotel blasted down upon her, carrying her with 1,000,000 pounds of brick, metal, plaster, and wood to meet other people in the hives below, all on their way to click down to the cellar where the explosion rid itself of them in its own unreasonable way. Sorry for reading so fast. That last sentence is massively long. It never stopped because I wanted to stop because I wanted to point out Montag is imagining what's happening to Mildred. And he's like, I wonder if in the last moment the TV screen goes out and she sees her own reflection and realizes how empty she really was and screams about her wasted life right before she died. And guys, if I told you that I wanted you to learn something from this section is so much power. I know you're 15, 16 years old and not thinking about this, but we do not want to face the end of our life like Mildred's facing hers. Now, of course, this is all hypothetical. Montag isn't imagining this, but imagine right now that you, in the last second before you go to meet your maker, you realize how much you wasted your life and how terrible it was. And that's not how we want to end. We want to end our life thinking about, the positive impact we made, the good things we did, the people we helped, not about how empty our life was. Guys, no offense to any of you watching this. A lot of you have empty lives. Your lives are designed around entertainment, just like we see in this book. There's a reason why some of you have flat zeros in my class. It's because you'd rather play on an Xbox than do your work. And you know what? I'm not saying this work is, life altering, but I'm telling you, when your whole life is built around what I want to do in this moment and I have no impulse control, then you are Mildred and you are going to end up in that situation eventually where you're looking at the end of your life and realizing, what have I done? Well, I've logged 700 hours on Fortnite. Congratulations. What a waste of your life. What a waste of your life. You called a bunch of people bad names and things like that and insulted them on the computer. Congratulations. You were not an impactful person. You're a Mildred. Don't be a Mildred, okay? All right, going on. Right as this happens, it clicks. If you'll remember way back, and I think it was the first chapter, Montag asked Mildred where they met, and neither of them could remember. He remembers now. He remembers they met in Chicago, and it kind of clicks because, and the relevance of that, to be honest with you, is that now that Mildred's dead, it all clicks for him, and he realizes, that that he cared about her. All right. He doesn't love her, I don't think, but she's a person, and he's different than her. He is not selfish anymore. We know that because of what we've seen and what we're about to see. So then we get some more about the cities dying, just there being nothing but ash. And then we get to the next part, and Montag's thinking about, the book of Ecclesiastes and how he needs to share that. But and he starts thinking, what's next for us? And this is kind of where we start hitting the resolution of the book. Montag talks about, well, we're just going to travel the railroads, and we're going to look for people who need help, and we're going to help them, and we're going to share with them what we know and try to help build a better civilization. And he says, we'll just start walking, and we'll see what comes our way, and we're going to do what needs to be done. I mean, if that's not just the attitude we should all have. Instead of, don't stop planning. But the fact is that each day we should face with, what's today giving me, and what do I need to do with what I'm given? All right. Not so much about what am I going to do 15 years from now. Like I said, you can think about that, but we also need to take each day we're given as its individual entity and handle it. Okay, we get Granger starts talking again. First of all, he says what we're going to do is they're going to head into the city. Now, this is probably different than today. It's obviously not a nuclear bomb like we would see today. After a bomb goes off, if it was a nuclear bomb today, you don't go to that city to help out. That place is dead. You're not going to be in there for years because of radiation, but that's not the way this bomb is set up. So Granger immediately says we're going to start heading that way. Of course, dead center of the cities are going to be gone, but on the outskirts, there's going to be people who are injured and hurt and who need help, and we're going to go help them. And then he does something really cool. One of the neat parts of this book, and really starts to wrap it up well, is we talked the very beginning, one of the symbols of the firemen was the phoenix. And now Granger brings that back up. He's like the phoenix. He explains what a phoenix does. And one thing that Harry Potter's done is you all know what a phoenix is. Phoenix is a bird that would burn itself up, literally, and then be reborn from the ashes. And Granger compares man to that. He's like, we're the same way because we will burn ourselves out, but we never stop rebuilding. We'll constantly come back. So you look right now, our society in a lot of ways is collapsing right now. I don't want to be gloom and doom on you guys because I think we're going to be fine, but some definite changes need to be had. We're seeing flaws in things like our medical system. And don't take that as an offense. I'm not pooping on America here, and I'm not saying everyone else is better, but if you can't understand that, right, my wife works at a hospital. She works at South Alabama's hospital. When there are 200 cases as I'm filming this of coronavirus in our city. If we can't handle 200 cases of something, we're not prepared for a lot of things. And then you think about places like New York, New Orleans, Detroit, all these other places that are dealing with it. You can't get even masks for people. Guys, we've got some definite issues that we need to be thinking about. Well, Mr. Morse, they couldn't know this was coming. Pandemics, like things like bad flu, they happen. We've seen it in the previous years. They could have known it was coming. Reparation, something we're not good at in this country. We think about what we want to do, and that's it. There's a ton of people who lost their jobs, lost their health care. So now how are they even going to get a test for this? So they don't go to the hospital. Those death numbers we see, they're probably a lot higher because there's a lot of people dying at home because they can't afford to die in a hospital. We're definitely seeing issues with that. We're seeing issues where if a company misses 1 week of profits, they go bankrupt. I mean, we're seeing where people have no savings. There's a lot of things about our society right now that we should be looking at as things need to change. We need to fix them. The thing is that we could easily all roll over and give up. And some people are doing that, sadly. But the fact is that humans are built in a way that we recover. You can look through history and see these horrible tragedies that happen. You can look back to the Great Depression. You can look at World War I, World War II, all these things that have occurred, and we bounce back. And we're going to bounce back. And Granger says that's how we're like the phoenix. He says, we know all the silly things we've done for 1,000 years, and as long as we know and always have it around, then we can see it. Someday we'll stop making the funeral pyre and jumping in the middle of them. Now, I cut out some more of the cursing, and again, I apologize for some of the language in this book. See, I don't feel like Granger cussing here is necessary. It is showing how adamant he is, how passionate he is about this, but you can be passionate without using cursing, all right? But he's pointing out that hopefully one day we'll learn our lesson. Now, of course, he's being much more positive than me. We don't seem to learn our lessons, but maybe one day, all right? He says, now let's get on upstream and hold on to one thought. You're not important. You're not anything. Someday the load we're carrying with us may help someone. But even when we had the books on hand a long time ago, we didn't use what we got out of them. We went right on insulting the dead. We went right on spitting in the graves of all the poor ones who died before us. We're going to meet a lot of lonely people in the next week, in the next month, in the next year. And when they ask us what we're doing, you can say we're remembering, that we'll win out in the long run. And someday we'll remember so much that we'll build the biggest steam shovel in history and dig the biggest grave of all time and shove war in and cover it up. Come on now, we're going to build a mirror factory first and put out nothing but mirrors for the next year and take a long look at it. So he points out that don't feel like you're important. Don't feel like you're better than anyone. You are a receptacle for information to help people when they need it. And he says, and remember, for the longest time we had books, and he's talking to us. He's talking to you and me right now. We have books. We have access to things, and we don't use it. We laugh at it. We do things like you all. I'll guarantee you, probably every one of you in this watching this, every one of you in my classroom in first period, at some point was just almost willing to, not that you would do this, but to cuss out Alexander Dumas for The Count of Monte Cristo. Those of you that even attempted to read it, you're just like, no, this is stupid. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. Guys, that is a work of art that most of us, I would argue none of us will ever come close to eclipsing that. That has been lauded as an amazing book, and yet you didn't want to read it because you wanted to play Xbox, and you got mad about it, and you got confused when you read the first chapter, so you threw it against the wall and said, screw it, I'm not doing it. And you had a little hissy fit and talked about how that book sucks. It doesn't. It doesn't. Most of us would be lucky to do something that has half of the longevity that book did. When he says we kept on spitting in the faces of the dead, what he means is we've had people that have contributed, taken the time to put down books to help us. And we even decided to say, I don't want to read this. This is stupid. I want to watch TV, and ignored it. And he says that even when we had books, that's the way we behaved. He's talking to us. That is a warning to you and me. He says eventually, though, we're going to get it right. He says we're going to get rid of war. And then he talks about building a mirror factory. And what's that mean? Well, he says what that means is about being reflective. He doesn't literally mean a mirror factory. But what he means there is it's something we're going to take a long look at ourselves and see how we need to fix things. Something that we don't do. All right? We just don't do this the way we should. All right? At this point, something, and this is kind of the ending of the book, but at this point, something interesting happens. And this is it's not because he's setting up a sequel or anything like that. But Montag takes the lead, and Granger steps back and lets him lead because, Montag is a man of action while the rest of these guys are kind of men of the mind. So right now we kind of see that maybe this is going to be okay. Montag might become the leader of this, and with these guys behind him, maybe they can make a difference. That's kind of the one little gleaming bit of hope. I will tell you, you've got this big three of dystopian literature. You've got Fahrenheit 451, 1984, and then Brave New World. And Fahrenheit 451 is the only one that offers any kind of little bit of hope, to be honest with you. The other two definitely end on a very pessimistic angle. All right. Now, as he goes to the city, the ending of this book is Montag remembers two parts of things he's read. The first one was that part from Ecclesiastes that I already mentioned, the part about there's a time to break down and a time to build up. There's a season for everything. He remembers that, but he also remembers a part from Revelation, and here's that part. It says that on either side of the river was a tree of life which bare 12 manners of fruit and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of this tree were the healing of the nations. And Montag's like, that's the part I'm going to quote when we get to the city. And the reason is that it's about healing of the nations. If you know anything about the book of Revelation, it describes Armageddon and this upheaval of the world and the destruction of the world. But then you also have this idea about afterwards there being this healing of the nations, and Montag is in that situation right now. Not literally, but I mean, in a lot of ways very similar. So that's the end of the book. I I told you it doesn't really end well. The resolution doesn't tell us what happens. It just kind of gives us a hint of what could happen. But that's dystopian literature. They don't tell you, hey, it's a happy ending, everyone lived happily ever after, here's where everybody was 5 years later. It just would cheapen the novel. All right. So that's it. We're done. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope these videos have been helpful, and I hope that you come back to this book at some point later in your life, and I hope that it's changed your opinions of reading in general. I hope you realize that even if it's not something that you want to do, even if it doesn't become a hobby that you love, that there is value in it. So many of you come into my class thinking that reading and books in general are stupid and we shouldn't have to fool with them. And I really want you to change that. I want you to understand that the reason you feel that way is because you just don't want to do it. It's not that there's not value in this stuff. There really is. There's so much that can change your mind on this. And, I know that because you guys will read one stupid post by, somebody, or you'll listen to somebody you respect rant for 5 minutes about something and you immediately have your mind changed. Just think about what would happen if you picked up something with the power of this book or some other books out there I could even recommend, and how they could completely alter the way you think, and for the positive. Because most of you have a pretty twisted view of the way the world works right now. The world's not about you. The world's not about just entertaining yourself and having the most fun. It's not. I'm sorry. If it was, you would be in charge of everything. Because if your happiness was all that mattered, we would all be your servants. And guess what? We're not. All right? So, God didn't put us on this earth for those reasons. He put us here to serve, not to be served. And most of you in here do not get the concept of service. And that's one of the things that books like this can help us do. All right. And there's so much potential in each of you. And I really would love to see you start branching out from, the entertainment is all that matters to the helping others is all that matters. I would really love to see that some of you making those steps. All right. Entertainment's good. We should still have fun. God put us on this planet to enjoy it. But that's not the end all. That's not the goal of life. And that's one of the things that Bradbury's reaching out to us and showing us. All right. Well, I still ended up going nearly 20 minutes to cover a few pages. So whatever. I apologize for that. But we are done with these videos. And so I'm going to end here, and hopefully you're able to get all your questions, and we'll test out on this and finish up. And then we'll move into our next unit, which I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. But we'll figure out something. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you again for your time, and good luck on your questions and your tests.